The first 3 weeks of the eruption here in Hawaii, crazy things would happen in the middle of the night. A new fissure would open up and it would threaten a new neighborhood. Thousands of people are evacuated from their homes. I started the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group to help people understand what's going on and get their questions answered.
Hey, how's it going? We're live. This is Fissure 20.
We had hundreds of people all throughout the neighborhoods sending in videos, articles, and images. We spend a lot of time making sure the accurate information gets out.
This is live. There's still lava moving.
They weren't just sharing a story, they were helping their neighbor. If a family was being evacuated, my group would just jump in and help out. It was huge. They were watching out for each other.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming. Thank you for the support from everybody.
As we go through this, we're growing closer together as a community. When tragedies like this strike, you really realize how much you need each other.
We are the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute, HVERI for short. A lot of people know us from the 2018 eruption of Kīlauea in the Lower East Rift Zone. Working under Hawaii Tracker on the Facebook group. Since then, we've been trying to carry on and take the lessons, the hard lessons that were learned during that eruption and try and prepare for the next major disaster that comes to our island.
Yeah, so we do that through two different programs. One is volcano education, and the other part is digital resilience, which we address through online groups on social media. So the way the two programs work together is that the social media networks end up being a distribution pathway for all the information. And having that network in place means we can provide more than just volcano education, but any other preparedness information as well.
What we were working for really came about in the Mauna Loa eruption in 2022. Within hours of that eruption starting, we had the mayor, Mitch Roth, we had USGS HVO Ken Hahn on the stream trying to help flush out a little bit of the ongoing because it's so new. It's completely different from our previous major eruption, which was 2018.
One of the things that Talmadge and I were talking about was how do we deal with social media? It was something we needed to figure out and get right. Our job is to get information to the public and make sure that the public get it as well as possible and as correctly as possible. When Philip and Dane started coming to and live streaming the meetings, it was great because we were reaching more people than we normally would. So when the eruption actually happened, we had this relationship. The interviews we did during the eruption, the most fun ones were the ones with Philip and Dave because they were more relaxed, and we knew we were getting to the local community, and people were asking questions. So those were the best. I think I just want to really give a shout out to those guys and how we worked as a team on this eruption. It really worked out well, and we got to a lot of people we wouldn't have normally gotten.
Aloha everyone, welcome to our Hawaiian Volcano Tracker for January 15, 2026. We are HVERI, the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute. I'm Philip Ong, I'm here with Mr. Dan DuPont, and as always our ASL interpreters, Dano and Carrie. We've had episode 40 of Kīlauea's ongoing eruption, Dane. How has this past week been for you?
Cold. It's been cold. Today especially been pretty chilly out here, for Hawaii standards at least. 60 something, but feels like negative 20. Besides that, just got through that windstorm that we had yesterday, knocked out power for a good amount of people, and yeah, just waiting now, looking at the next episode. A little bit off over the horizon still yet, but got the signs there, huh?
Yeah, it was definitely cold up the hill as well, and offset by all this heat being put out here, and that's made some really impressive plumes that have been drifting up into the sky that you can see from island wide, if the weather is clear enough, because there's also been some rain kind of moving through over the past week here. So we do realize that today is the 15th. There is also a USGS volcano awareness talk happening tonight. Just so you know, we are going to record that and play that back for you next week. And so understood, if you are watching us back on replay, of course, go and see it in person if you can. If you could not make that talk and you're watching us instead, we will bring that to you next week as well. So either way, hopefully you will not miss out. All right, so that said, today we're going to talk about this recent episode 40, as well as step back and look at episode 39 briefly in the context of comparing it to episode 40, looking at them a little bit together there. So as usual, Dana will be collecting questions and leading discussion on our chat. Anything else you want to add, Dana, before we get into it?
No, I think that's it. Let's do this.
All right. So let's change our screen around here. All right, let's see here. We're not quite all there yet. All right. And all right. Well, hey everyone, this is our Hawaiian volcano summary for January 15th, 2026. Episode 40 of Kīlauea's ongoing summit eruption lasted just under 10 hours this past Monday, January 12th, from about 8 a.m. till 6 p.m., with fountain heights reaching around 800 feet or 250 meters, and only from the north vent. Here you see a time lapse from the KW camera showing that outburst on the right side of the screen here, and lava covering over half of the Halemaʻumaʻu crater floor with that large flow, as you see there. Looking at the V1 camera, you can see that outburst from the V1 event, which is actually split with several openings, which the USGS reported was constricted prior to the onset of this episode, and led to an arcuate spattering fountain that grew in vigor just before the high fountains began. This view from the V2 camera, from the volcano house perspective, shows that split fountain there, and also the large gas plume rising in up to 13,000 feet in the atmosphere with weak winds around the summit area. Even though the episode lasted just under 10 hours, the fact that it came out of just the north vent seems to have reduced the lava output to a smaller volume of 5.5 million cubic meters. Still an impressive amount, but quite a bit less than the previous episode, number 39, which had 9.3. Here, that was a view from the V3 camera there, showing that single outburst north vent. And here, the B1 camera from the far side of the crater, showing the lava flow cutting across the crater, largely in daytime, but also seen to be overturning at night. For comparison, back in the end of 2025, on December 23rd, we had the outburst of episode 39, which had double fountains from both the north and south vents, and the north vent split. So in fact, a triple fountain in that case, but two large openings, the two vents there, with lava also coming all the way across the crater floor onto the east side. Not in as much volume reaching this eastern side, but certainly putting out a large amount of lava in a shorter amount of time. Back to the KW camera perspective, you see that same dual fountain and strong, brief outburst of lava lasting just under 6 hours in that case. And here's a V1 camera showing the various fountains there and continuing movement of material and outbursts in the rubble following the fallout of episode 39 fountains there as well. Looking at the V2 camera, from the volcano house perspective there, you see glow and spattering from both vents, some weather obscuring the fountains, but 2 fountains clearly visible through the fume there. And finally, the V3 perspective, showing once again the 2 fountains from the north and south vents and continuing movement of material afterwards. Looking at the ground tilt for the last 2 episodes here, you see the drop and recovery of episode 39 and then 40. You can see 40 was a little bit smaller with that smaller volume and despite the longer duration. And you see the recovery that's ongoing at the summit, indicating episode 41 is expected to be coming. The USGS update has some other notes about episode 40, in particular that there was Tephra fallout that actually reached Uēkahuna Overlook in the national park, with reticuli as large as 2 inches or 5 centimeters falling at that overlook, as well as large whirlwinds or ʻpuahiohio also visible in the live streams there. However, given the recharge rates, the current window of for the next episode 41 is between January 19th and 25th there. We have an updated map through episode 39 showing the area of lava flows, and in this orange color, the spatter deposits, where we have a larger pile of material and a slope with lava flows running downhill from there, as well as updated statistics you can see noted here at the bottom of the screen. Overall, episode 39 had a higher discharge rate, one of the higher ones of the set, but 40 dropped back down to some of the other typical episodes that have been variable over the last few pulses of activity here. Looking at volumes, you can see again for 39 a slightly higher volume at 9.3 and lower at 40 at 5.5. With fountain heights also reflecting similarly with higher fountains during 39 at 1,400 feet as opposed to 800 feet for episode 40. So that was most of the lava activity. Over the past week, we also had a cluster of earthquakes under the summit of Kīlauea, as well as ongoing south flank events and deep Pahala source events from the hotspot. But this prompted a USGS notice information statement on Wednesday evening, noting that this activity is larger than anything that has occurred during this over a year-long activity so far, and that there is a complex balance of pressure and strength of the rocks, with the rocks weakening, one possible outcome being the injection of magma into a fracture creating a dike, or if it breaches the surface, creating a new vent, shifting the focus of eruption. Noting that historically, episodic fountain eruptions can cease when a magma supply is diverted in this manner. So starting to see some changes from the big pile of lava changing the pressure regime there, and potentially noting signs that there could be changes heralding the end at some point in the future here from the USGS. Otherwise, earthquake counts are fairly steady per week over the past year. You can see here a couple up and downs. Really, the shift has been to their location underneath the summit, as you see here. In between these episodes, we still have outgassing of volcanic gas from both vents here. You see it dispersing around the communities with our weak winds. Even without that large outburst, still affecting areas nearby over the course of the day, as you can see in the historical graphs here. So certainly the episode 40 outburst put a big plume of emissions into the upper atmosphere that blew up southeast and northwest. And hopefully that is calming in the surface for us here moving forward. And that's our Hawaiian volcano summary for this week. All right, so there's a lot to get in there. We'll move on to our hazards here and come into our VOG measurement and prediction program. As usual, the VMAP VOG forecast dashboard, which you see here starting off with our sulfur dioxide layer from the volcano. This has been ranging. Typically, it's been 1,000 to 2,000 tons of sulfur dioxide coming out per day on average. But there have been these increases in the days prior to the main episodes where it goes up to 3,000, 4,000, up to 5,000 sometimes. So now the range is listed as 1 to 5,000, but you see the amount listed here as 1,500 as that lower average that you see right after an episode. So even with that lower amount, lower than 50 or 100,000 tons per day, which we might expect during the main outburst like we had on Monday, what's coming out at a low level now is still being dispersed southwest and to the north. And you can see here the areas of effect of that more pure sulfur dioxide component of gas. But it reacts in the atmosphere and creates these sulfate aerosols, more of this VOG, which can linger and travel farther. So you see it here wrapping around the Kona coast, as well as affecting areas further north of Hilo into the saddle as well. So that's still our main hazard on the island from this activity. It's nice to go and see, and it's great for us to learn about and to prepare ourselves for the future hazards that may occur in our communities. At this point, it's in the park, in a nice lava stadium, not affecting anyone. Great for everyone to see. But we learn from this so that in the future we can be better prepared, while at the same time noting that the hazard for this one is really the gas, and occasionally when this Tephra is falling on the highway or nearby communities, it can really be a hazard. So great to hear that it fell mostly to the west in a national park, a little bit in the Overlook, very briefly. It sounds like it wasn't too bad over there, and prepare for the next one as usual. It's been 40 of these now, so this is all getting fairly routine, you would expect. Yeah? Looking at our purple air citizen science monitoring network. Let's try to show some of these stations. We can get one of these that's actually in a national park that's listed on here as well. You see it's actually reaching into the red and purple at times, into the yellow other times, depending exactly when you're timing it there. So variable winds and certainly impacts of gas in the area there. So that's the purple air network. And I'm showing it mostly close to the park here, but you can see down in Pahala quite often has impact as well. You see now it's in the yellow. I'm all the way to Ocean View, and sometimes South Kona over here as well. You see these effects. So I don't want to gloss that over much because there are certainly, I think I screwed up the range here, but there are certainly gas impacts all the way on the south part of the island persistently that we don't talk about very much. Focusing back into the national park, which does have a little unit out there. Everything is showing in the green presently in the national park. So just reload to make sure it's current. And scroll it here. Yeah, everything's still in the green. But if we come to the charts and click here for the history, we can see there actually are data points that are coming at the Art Center, for example, where SO2 got into the yellow and orange several times over the last 24 hours. Uēkahuna Overlook, you see there into the orange and reds, unhealthy and unhealthy for sensitive groups happening earlier this morning, with even particulate matter noted there this morning. Campground looking okay, but steam vents showing SO2 records as well. See all those times all through there. And everything else in the green, but we've noted in the past that these are 15-minute measurements. So a lot of times if it's just drifting through and you can smell it a little bit, that won't necessarily mean that it shows up on the graph. For it to show these amount of orange, it has to have been lingering in that area for long enough that over the 15-minute period of time, it really got flagged as that's not a good place to be. So that is the biggest hazard still for all of us, residents and visitors alike. Fortunately, when the fountains are very high and the heat can get up into the atmosphere, we can lose a lot of that heat upwards. So we can look at our satellite data here, the Mounts project showing the SO2 layer for us over Hawaii Island. And let's just go back in time. You can see presently here, the most recent VOG layer caught drifting to the north. Prior day in the upper atmosphere, the day before that, it's drifting to the northwest. But the day before that, it was actually the source here on the 12th, this one, blowing to the southeast here. So up into the upper atmosphere, the satellite's capturing all the layers of atmosphere. And so there you go, see it going from there to there the following day and coming to today here. So prior to the outburst, you can see there was fog north to Hilo, south, more dispersed, east and west, north to Hilo, south, southwest, upper atmosphere there, more towards Hilo, but also southwest. You see the fog's been all over the place in this winter variable wind month, where we can go all the way back to before Christmas time here, where on the 23rd is when we had a last outburst of episode 39, and it put a big gas plume that went to the south. You can see over there, kind of in one go. And prior to that, there was that low level. So that's our VOG history here over the past about month. See it move forward there and bring us to today, where we're back again to this in between episodes emission of VOG, which can still be concerning. And that's our hazard summary for the week. So we'll move into our visuals, and starting off with the KW camera capture of back to January 8th, when we had the first overflows, followed by some inactivity, lots of overflows coming until finally we have the outburst, and then the cooling and final ooze outflows there of activity following the main outburst there. So let me pull this back in speed and let's play it again. So you can see there those first overflows, not as easily visible through a lot of weather. But then after a little bit of an activity, you see them getting more frequent, those overflows. Some of them getting quite long. One of these overflows from the south vent reaching 1 kilometer, 3,300 feet long, all the way out there. All this in the morning before on the 12th, when the main episode fountaining begins around 8 a.m. It's around 6 a.m. that you start seeing more continuous fountaining before the main outburst there. And there you can see it. All right, so I'll stop it there, and I don't need to see this ooze outs anymore, but similar view from the F1 camera, the thermal camera. You see a lot of the steam affecting the view. But here we come to the 8th, and the first overflow is from the south vent up there at the top of the screen. Here comes the north vent overflows. And the big ones now cutting through day and night with the main outburst looping around the north side of the crater and wrapping around to the south when it reaches that far side. To the V1 camera again, a little bit more extended view here. You can see the glow and spattering, and we start building up a little bit of a spatter cone within the north vent there. See, it's closing in from all sides, growing upwards there. There's still an opening on the north piece of it there. They zoomed out. But when a main outburst comes, and you can see that's a different shaped nozzle, and it affects things a bit when it first gets going. And then through the next day and night, a few more of these ooze outflows, but nothing really moving in a large volume there. Moving to the V2, looking straight on, north vent, south vent, you see them both spattering, overflowing in this precursory activity. It's interesting that despite that, only the north vent was the one that had the higher fountains. During this time, the south vent is still bubbling away here on the left and glowing, but not really putting out as much lava. There you saw the V2 view. And the V3, you see both vents, they're glowing, overflowing. There's that little cone building on a north vent. See the south vent more clearly with its dome fountains and overflows as well. And here you'll see that while the north vent starts shooting up the higher fountain in the morning on the 12th, the south vent still stays glowing and active, just not fountaining. And that seems to have reduced the amount of lava coming out, how fast it was coming out, and how much in total came out, all of those things. So it's useful, I think, to compare, and for us to help review 39 and 40 together, let's go back and look at 39 and 40 back to back. First, let's look at the KW camera. Here's 39. You see the outburst with twin fountains, floods the center part of the crater floor. It still wraps around, but it's over fairly quickly. Now let's go to 40. A lot more overflows, more of a central cutting across the crater floor and then reaching the far side and wrapping around, a little less lava over a longer time. Thermal view, here's 39. And outburst, a little more quicker. And this is 40, and I actually sped this up so you can see more of the overflows and still not be sitting here all day. But overflows, lots of them coming for 3.5 days before that burst on the 12th. That lasts under 10 hours. That's a comparison, 39 and 40 for thermal. V1 camera, this is 39, and note how it also has this little spatter cone growing within the north vent too that changes its shape before that main burst. Right, and so on this one, I'll go back here and let's come back to someone here. Let me slow this down a bit. You can see that's moments in time, almost 3 different fountains there. You see there's a south vent one coming up back there. Let's see, I'm going to change my color of my screen brush for once here, which I don't usually do. So let's make it yellow there, right? So there's 1 up there, and 2 over here, and then 3 over here. Pull that back again. And there you can see those 3 different views, the south vent and double from the north vent being split. So that's 39 on a V1, and here's 40 once again, with a similar building up of the spatter cone within. It also bursts out, and what you really don't see is the lack of activity from the south vent on this one. That's the biggest change there for episode 40 on the V1. So back to 39, here's a V2 camera that's straight on. We see both vents glowing and spattering. When a fountain to start with very few overflows, you see twin fountains there. Quick burst, then it's over. Whereas for episode 40, you see there the main burst from the north vent and not much in the south vent. Nice zoom out so you can see the height of this eruptive plume, and then shutting off on the north vent and continuing low-level activity, overflows, and movement, followed by eventually more ooze-outs after episode 40. So V3, the last view looking across, this is 39, so you can compare this. Double fountains coming. There they are, from both vents over the course of 1.5 day. And then here, episode 40, just the north vent in contrast. Still a nice fountain, not quite as tall either, but good amount of lava. 5.5 million cubic meters is a big amount. Just we're getting spoiled by the volume of some of these other episodes that are really record-setting. So one last set of cameras to go through. It's the B1, so episode 39. From the far side, double fountain. Here comes the flows. Here you see it's not quite across the center, but you see it coming around. And also, interestingly, you see there's ooze up flows coming up, bursting from underneath the crater crust, coming up during episode 39. And it's hard to show exactly here, but there is an injection and movement of the crust is moving all the way out here as well. If I wiggle it enough in the right places here, you can maybe see some of that, although it's hard with the weather coming across too. So episode 39 from the B1 camera, we'll let it play straight through here. That ooze up flows, and episode 40 with not as much lava, overflows coming first, but actually fanning more widely across this eastern part, as you can see here. So those are our time lapses that I share with you guys today. A couple other things. We have a photo release from the USGS here. Showing, let's make this fit the screen a little better. Some other views. There's a fountain clearly higher than the crater rim and higher than the cinder cone that's built on the rim there. But the vents have come up so high within the crater that even still, that doesn't mean quite as tall a fountain as we're used to seeing. It's still at 800 feet. And let's see if we can get this one all on screen here as well. The full size of that plume up above the actual lava, all the heat rising with carrying a lighter Tephra particles, Pele's hairs, and other ash size particles. Similar wide view here as well. And then coming into our map that we've looked at briefly here, and we'll look at again. which gives us a little more of these details, which are interesting to look at here. With event elevations around 3,445 feet, meaning that the vent is about 300 feet below the crater rim, about 100 feet above the surrounding lava, with the cone that's up on the rim being about 130 feet above the rim itself. And so if it's above the cone, you're noting that it's got to be higher than those 230 feet. Let me see here, 395 plus, from the vent, so 295 plus 130 there. So what am I doing here? That's 425 feet from the vents to the top of the cone. If you see it exceeding that, or for comparison, this one might have been twice that tall, I suppose. And we have other thickness elevations here, but this is really like a big wedge, as we've heard Ken describe it, really thick on the west and really thin on the east. So these are really just averages of some points in the middle. But you can see the average thickness there is approaching 500 feet. 230 feet, with a maximum thickness being close to 500 feet. Now, it is interesting to note here in their map that they have made some corrections. They say here, let's make this bigger so you can maybe read it. Where is it here? The map shows a significant expansion of the vent spatter deposit, which is a result of more comprehensive mapping of the episode 38 deposit in the southwest corner of Halemaʻumaʻu. And additionally, the updated statistics indicate a maximum thickness lower than previous maps. That's because new analysis of overflight data showed that those measurements near the vents were affected by the gas plume. And now that this has been corrected for, the new thickness values are more accurate. And that's what this is essentially saying, which just is a little insight also into how difficult these measurements are to get, and the error that's naturally involved in them, because a lot of things do depend on a whole series of measurements and analyses that result in these numbers that we're actually interested in here at the end. So finally, here in our observations, let's try to peek in, if I may, if it'll let me, into the live camera. Let's see, I can't get this one to load. Let's try my other one. V2 looks like it's pretty foggy out there. Some degassing in my V3. Yeah, lots of degassing from their vents. So that's our observations. And before we take our mid-show break here, I just wanted to touch base on our Volcano Watch articles that we've been having over the last month. We haven't spent much time on many of them here, but to rewind and step back in time, we'll first note this article that was written about the volcanic whirlwinds, and in particular, that despite all the different names that you hear, which is fine for us communicating, and having fun with each other. But there are a couple of ways that you can refer to them that might be more accurate, right? First, in Hawaii and Hawaiian language, you might call them ʻpuahiohio, right? As you can see it on the screen right there, or whirlwinds, right? So whirlwinds are things that include dust devils, which is basically when you pick up dust in a little whirlwind, or it could be an ash devil, a Tephra devil, a lava devil, or all depending on the kind of debris that's involved, right? Other larger whirlwinds like tornadoes are stronger cousins, but they have winds more than 300 miles per hour and tracks that go on for tens of miles. So really, we don't have any NATOs here. We have more of these whirlwind style things. And so you could call them lava devils, Tephra devils, dust devils, ash devils.
It's weird that we get like the same type of vortexes out over the water. We were just looking at one of those the other day in Hilo Bay front, right? A little, what do we call that thing? Some kind of water vortex, but it was just like,
Yeah, water devil.
Yeah.
There you go. Devils are everywhere, apparently.
Yeah.
Wind vortex, wind vortices, or whirlwinds.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a lot of.
It had some weird name where it didn't connect all the way up, and it was just a surface level feature. I was laughing about it, but yeah, lots of different names. Can't be really wrong.
Yeah. So here they say the most recent ʻpuahiohio are probably best described as Tephra devils, mostly of Tephra, with the heat of the lava generating the whirlwinds. But I would say keep discussing, and that's the most important thing is we talk about it and learn about it and look for those little differences and details, right? It helps you focus your observation a little more keenly and see what's going on and distinguish these things from each other. So that was one. That goes back to December 26th, Christmas week, that volcano watch. We also had a roundup of fireworks from Kīlauea fountains. Hauʻole makahiki ho, Happy New Year. With their some iconic views of double fountains early on. That's episode 13, before those high fountains really came into being. There's episode 24, with a big plume-like fountain shooting up, starting to arc. There's our V-shaped fountain that was a feature of episode 28. 34, when it started bursting extra high from both the north and south vents at the same time. And of course, 38, when it went sideways and landed on a V3 camera over there. Some of those views from across the year of lava fountains. And in the last two volcano watches, we have the one from last week is a look back on an episode of Kīlauea eruption, right? Which is interesting and notes the sequence of that eruption, which I don't know if it's worth really going back through this at this point. There are some comparisons to what's happening now. But really, we've broken most of those because we have Norinara episode 40, whereas Kīlauea only had 17 episodes of fountaining, right? It's true that the crater was filled with a good amount of lava, and there was a Tephra pile built on the rim. But the crater was quite a lot smaller, right? So, it's true the fountains got higher, dropped more lava, more Tephra, and made a bigger hill. But otherwise, the comparisons are hard to continue there, right? The lava drain back that occurred in Kīlauea only occurred early in our ongoing summit eruption because now our vents are up on a hill and it's hard to flood them and then they can drain back in to the top of the hill. And so things have changed that way as well. And we also saw in Kīlauea eruption how the cone itself would crack and move and slump. And in fact, something we've always seen on our hikes of Kīlauea, you can look up and see the cinder cone kind of frozen in mid-slump with big scour marks where those big slabs of lava were sliding down over that putty-like gooey stuff before it just hardened in place. And yeah, that stuff can get moved around by the lava, become islands. We've seen that happen over the years here. And so there's some more things to compare. In total, Kīlauea over 1 month put out 50 million cubic meters. So we are now 4 times that amount over a year-long eruption at the summit. So that's the Kīlauea, some comparisons. And then we had another volcano watch released today, which is looking back at the 12 episodes of lava fountaining at Mauna-Ulu in 1969 to 1970. And that one started off as double fountains, which became single fountains. They got quite high as well. Now let's see, where's the number here?
Wasn't it 1700?
Yeah, I want to say closer to 1800, 1770 feet.
1770.
540 meters during episode 9. So a little bit higher than the highest one we've had in our current eruption here. But that also not quite the same as what's happening here. Mauna-Ulu is a little further away from the summit as well, more in a rift, and closer to the Pu'o'o, which is going to be the next one we'll talk about next week, of the episodic fountains that occurred there. So it's hard to really know how to compare them because since they're all in different parts of the volcano, slightly different dynamics, but we're starting to look at how could this thing actually end. Excuse me.
Yeah, that's a question I've been hearing a lot about too. What does different ending sequences even look like?
Yeah, and we really don't know. We can just like look at the menu of what's happened before, right? And so, for example, Kīlauea, it turned out that there was ongoing inflation during all those fountains. And so when the last fountain ended, there was actually a net inflation over before the eruption began. That led to a migration of magma down the East Rift all the way to Kapoho, which erupted a month later. So migration of magma through a rift zone is a possibility. We're not seeing any signs of that yet, but that's something that can happen. And one of the main reasons why we do our work is because that would mean lava going into populated areas again, something we're very concerned about. That's one possibility. The other is that it can switch to, like in Mauna Ulu, it can switch from episodic high fountains to a continuous effusion where it just keeps oozing out for years and years and years. In fact, Mauna Ulu did that, got interrupted by a summit eruption, and it went back to oozing out for another couple more years afterwards, so lasting until 1975 in the end. And Pu'u'o similarly had its high fountain phase that ended when we had a new crack open up to Kupainaha for its episode 48 became the Kupainaha eruption, which then shifted the vent, made a lava shield, erupted ʻpuahiohio, made lava tubes, got all the way down to the ocean, destroyed Hawaiian communities, all that other phase of it, all because it shifted location of the vent and went from having high fountains to continuous lava coming out for years and years and then decades and decades, and eventually shifted back and kept oozing out. But that was a whole change in the character, and that's why it's really interesting to note what we saw the USGS put out that earlier. I noted it in our summary, and we'll come back to it again here about the earthquakes happening under the summit and how these are larger than what we've seen before under the summit region, and that might be a sign of a coming change at some point, such as a new crack opening that could shift the nature of the eruption. And one of these many ways that are on the menu that we don't know what might come next. So that's Mauna Ulu, and that's the Volcano Watch for today. And with that, I'll pass it to you, Dane.
All right.
And,
well,
yeah.
All right. Oh my God. Hold on. I have technical difficulties all of a sudden. Here we go. All right. Let me get the community corner or the modified community corner up. It's pretty brief today. Lou is on location and filming the talk from USGS that's going on right now. And the currently at the seismography talk with, what was its name? Sorry.
Dr. Thomas Lee, I believe, is on
Thomas
that.
Lee. But you can see we got a packed schedule here the next week. And really, other than on Sunday, they do take Sundays off on this. That we have something to do every day, from the hikes to the talk stories to the updates to the on location field going looking at the equipment. There's a little something for everybody, and did want to highlight one event in particular that we've helped collaborate on the 24th, the Ocean View Disaster Prep Fair. Bring this up here, and we can see this one starts at 2 p.m. runs till 5. It's going to be at the Ocean View Community Center. We're going to be presenting really the nitty gritty, what do you really need to know in a natural disaster with USGS, Hawaii County Civil Defense, the National Park Service, as well as the Ocean View Resilience Hub through Vibrant Hawaii, as well as collaboration, which is awesome, with KWXX, the 94.7 FM. But the real one they don't show on here is the new signal down in Ocean View that will help relay these emergency communications to the community that didn't exist in Mauna Loa in 2022. Next time, we'll have better ways to get information out, to notify people. So definitely want to encourage people to come check that out on the 24th. If you do live in Ocean View, we're going to be putting out a post on Tracker trying to figure out what questions you'd like to ask those responsible, the emergency managers, the ones making the decisions, before we get into the next major disaster. What do you want to know? So we'll be putting that out at this point, probably tomorrow would be my guess. And that's really it for my community corner. Mine's too tight today. I was in the process of AI generating some dogs drinking water, didn't get it done. But I did want to shout this out, and we want to thank everybody as well. The rely on viewers like you, the likes, the subscriptions, the shares, all that stuff really does help get our information out there, get eyes on it. And we did have a few donations come through on the hvary.org, where we do take donations. We are a 501c community-based organization. We did have Raven donate $10, mahalo Raven, and Gregory with a $25 donation. We also, in case you didn't see, are running a fundraiser over on YouTube. That means we receive all of your contributions that you put through there. There's no payment processing fees, things like that. It's awesome. So we encourage you on the YouTube. We encourage you on our hvary.org/donate as well. And thank everybody for tuning in today. I think that gets us through it, and we can get into the
thing. There you go.
All right.
All right. So, should we just keep going and do some questions at the end?
Yeah, there was one from Nathan, but I feel like you answered it. It was right on the nose of what you were talking about there, where about the volcano watch. He says USGS posted about the episodic eruption in 1969, but didn't mention any other episodes. Is 1969 and this one the only two recorded in history? You mentioned Pu'o'o and 3 years of episodic activity there.
Yeah, so 59 being Kīlauea, 69 being Mauna Ulu, and then Pu'o'o in 1983. That would be the three. Yeah. Yeah, and we suspect more, of course, but that's, and, recorded history only goes back until, in this case, 1700s.
Ken was saying for the caldera itself, like 15, he was thinking. For all the collapses and stuff when I was talking to him last about it. But yeah, it's only a brief snapshot of the history, so to speak. And it's interesting. You don't see many other of these giant deposits around the caldera of Tephra deposited on the rim. It's just not there. It's interesting.
Yeah, it really is it seems like a rare thing, not just for us, but geologically rare as well, right? So we really are lucky. It's no joke when we talk about Kīlauea might be a has-been, not because of anything, it's not any less spectacular than it was, but what's happening now is just so off the charts. It's just ridiculous to have one of these every week or two
in the stadium too,
and putting out this much lava and not actually causing that many issues for people. And it's just really, it's, we'll I think wish we had more time to live this time in slow motion if we could, once it's all done. So
one thing we're talking today, I was meeting today with civil defense. We're talking about the prep fair a little bit, and the thing that's changed. One of the things that's changed is the elevation of the fountain itself. Now it's so much higher that the threat profile has changed from the beginning of the eruption. Now Tephra, it gets up so much easier than it used to, and into the wind, and causes so much ashfall and pahala and all the things that we've been seeing more recently.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let me see here. Is there anything else? Okay, here's one. Since we're talking, this is right on topic for what we're talking about here. Susan asks, when Tephra and Pele's hair drifts onto the hands, does it improve soils? I assume into the lands, not hands, would be my guess.
Yeah, I mean the Tephra is like something that you see similar stuff. I mean, people go and mine the cinder cones down in Kapoho, right? For media, for plants, sometimes orchids are a famous thing here in Hawaii Island that are grown, or we're the orchid island after all. The Pele's hairs, I feel a little less about because they last in the soil for a while. So you could be just, working the soil with your bare hands and get one in your hands like decades after the thing was erupted or blew over there.
Right.
So I don't feel like they break down quite as fast.
I remember in 18, I was, my place was covered with Tephra, so I got to play with it a lot. And for planting, mixing in the soil, very bad idea. It's going to compact. It's going to become, you would rather have cinder in there to help aerate the soil type of thing. The Tephra is going to compact and not do that. But as a top dressing, crushed up and thrown on the top of the plants, they seem to love that. Right. And that kind of was a natural thing when you'd go clean the gutters or whatever, and then you'd have all this crushed up stuff, sprinkle it on an area, and they'd seem to pop a little bit.
So there you go. Great question, Susan. Just our own lived experience is the only discussion we can offer, really, right? It's, we don't have any hard answers.
One more question, then we can be free and clear questions if you want to just do it now.
Yeah, let's give it a shot.
U.S. I'm wondering if the earthquakes were lava moving around in the crater under the surface, or maybe some compression under all the new layers of lava in the crater.
Yeah, I think the best thing is to just look at the USGS statement themselves, where they say it's rock breaking due to magmatic pressure. So they would say it's the magma moving underneath a crater and trying to find more places to go because it's under increasing pressure. Right, and that's where that potential for change comes in, where we start paying more attention to all these little changes that are happening. Because the other thing that we've heard discussed here is not only is event elevation getting higher, making all the stuff shoot higher in the air, but it means the lava is going to come through more of the earth itself. And it's under more pressure because all the material is piled on top, adding pressure to what's holding it in. So it's got to come through that extra pressure again. And if you have a big enough pile at some point, is it easier to go sideways somewhere else and find a weaker spot? Right, and that's what's under discussion here. Is like, there's this rock earthquakes, meaning those rocks are cracking. Are those rocks cracking in a way that might create a pathway to change the dynamics of what's happening here at the summit? So that's where we'll get with these next set of updates here. Should we get into, Dane?
Yeah, let's go ahead. I was just looking at those earthquakes and just seeing there was a 6.0 just off the coast of Oregon, which is on the fault, right on the fault line. Anyways,
a little further afield than Kīlauea. Well, let's start here with
a little further.
Let's start by going back on some of the text updates. And since it's been a little while, let's get this up. I wanted to go back and actually highlight the update that was given on Christmas Day, because someone put some effort into this, and I feel like we should, even though it's been a little while, not let this go to waste here and just show you the update from December 25th. Your summary is normal, but here's your summary observations. Kīlauea is no longer erupting. However, Santa spotted a weak glow and almost landed on the vents, which looked remarkably like chimneys from the air. Luckily, his reindeer recognized they were an active volcano and pulled up at the last minute. Turns out those other spots of light were remnant incandescence of flows from episode 39 and not the lights of a town. Christmas is safe for another year, and Santa promises to get his eyes checked before driving again. If Santa had watched the overnight webcam views, he would have seen episode 39 lava flows continuing to creep along on the floor of the crater, etc., there. So I like it when
that's a good point. Brett was just like, that was probably Ken. I kind of would believe that, actually.
So it's great when they put some more personality into these updates. We can get kind of dry, and it takes a special occasion, which it was apparently on Christmas here. So I thought that was worth pointing out.
Watch this now.
Right? So before it fades into the horizon, I was going to throw it out there. We knew that, it's well done there. Right. So coming forward now to episode 40, we have our first significant note coming in on January 9th. where they say lava overflowed from the south vent overnight from January the 8th, starting at 4:05 p.m. and then later times during the night as well. Right, that's basically the first note that we want to share here. We won't read any more of that. But moving forward to Saturday the 10th, they note lava flowed intermittently from both vents with only short breaks between flows, with continuing dome fountaining and spattering and tremor all increasing that following day. It really looked like the episode was coming sooner than it arrived. Don't you think, Dane? You're waiting for this to come a little sooner than it actually came. By Sunday, lava overflowed nearly continuously, continuing pulses of dome fountaining and overflows. But then we started seeing deflation on the tote meter coming in. So another day goes by, and on the 12th, at 8:34 a.m., we see the onset of lava fountaining. You see the time revised at 8:22 a.m. We'll see other notes and other updates from this. So this is just the activity notice. It was paired with a observatory aviation notice as well, which I will not show here today. It's the same stuff. And then we have in between, during the episode 40 outburst, we have a daily update issued by the USGS at 9:50 a.m., during which they offer a little bit more details. They say here, noting the plume, gas plume rising over 4,000 meters, 13,000 feet above ground level, the light winds. They note the precursory activity that was spatter and dome fountains from both vents, including a large flow that reached 1,000 meters, 3,300 feet in length there. 8:22 is the official onset, although they say that there was spattering becoming overflow, becoming more continuous from 6:30 to 7, and then a restriction in that north vent with a nozzle effect that led to an arc fountain of spatter that was at first 5 to 10 meters, 15 to 30 feet high. And then they say at 8:13 a.m., vigor increasing significantly and shooting up. And by this point in time, 50 a.m., just before 10 a.m., exceeding 660 feet, 200 meters in height there. So that was the mid-eruption episode update. And then the end notice comes at 6:13 p.m. through a combined activity notice and aviation notice that, once again, we won't show here. The same text. And all they say here is the ending time, total time. Additional details will come in the next official report, which was issued the next day and has not changed until today. So really, it's this recap of the last episode, where they note here that there was overflows from the south vent on January 8th. Dome fountains were from the south vent, feeding overflows of several per hour. The north vent was producing flows less frequently, though spattering was often visible. Once again, they note that constricted opening of the north vent on Monday morning with the arcuate spatter fountain that grew at 8:13 a.m. The signals caused them to mark the start as actually 8:22 a.m. The peaking just before 10 a.m. at 800 feet or 250 meters, with the gas cloud rising as noted before. And here they note most tephra falling to the west of Halemaʻumaʻu, but also occasionally to the northwest and southwest, because you could see them on both the V1 and V3 cameras. And in particular, in person at the Uēkahuna Overlook in a national park, you could see in person reticulite chunks as large as 2 inches, 5 centimeters. Also, as we noted earlier, the large whirlwinds, or ʻpuahiohio, occurred invisible in live streams, with everything ending at approximately actually 6:04 p.m. This is a typo that's persisted after 9.7 hours of sustained fountain. They note here the highest instantaneous rate of 350 cubic meters. That's something that we just take them on their word. They give an estimated total volume of 5.5 million cubic meters and covering 50-60% of the crater floor. Now I skipped this number here, this average effusion rate of 190. The last 3 episodes have all been listed at 190. I kind of feel like this is something that's getting overlooked and not getting updated. Like this number over here got overlooked and is not getting updated also. Right? It's just one of these things. I would take more of these numbers that you can see clearly change, like the volumes or the peak rates, as opposed to the average rates that I calculate to be a little bit different here. And so, in fact, we have those most recent data points, as well as statistics from this new map that we talked about already here, with a total lava volume at this point of 209.8 million cubic meters, 55.5 billion gallons there. Right, so that volume over that length of time, we can start having our calculations and comparisons. So here we have our maximum fountain height by episode for Kīlauea, now over 1 year eruption from the very end of 2024 to the very start of 2026 here. And there's our fountain heights. You can see how they have varied. And we are still in this most recent population pattern right here, where we have a high range, but some of those peaking to 1,400 feet or higher, or being below 1,000 feet, depending on which flavor you get of this population here. Looking at the volumes, similar thing within this most recent grouping, we have a large variation in volumes as well. So here you see the high of episode 38 compared to 39, compared to 40, where it's been trending down, but all within this normal variation that we've seen over the previous few episodes as well. Discharge rates are showing the same pattern. You can see our highest ones have been 34, 35, 36, and 39 joined them as well in that same stratosphere, whereas 40 was more along the lines of 37 and 38, as you can see here by this lower discharge rate, and those being more similar to everything else we saw prior to seeing 2 vents shooting up at the same time. So really, these are the special ones, and 39 joined that group, but 40 did not. There's a difference there. For our durations, here's the graph unscaled. So our 3rd episode skews things by quite a bit. Everything, all variations are kind of small here on this bottom right, but there you see the little variations that occur. And our pause lengths, you can see with this most recent population, have also been variable. You can see, I see it somewhat as, you can eyeball, there's like a window there. Let's change my color again. Make this a little bit easier to see. There's this kind of window that occurs here, and that window seems to shift upwards. And you can be near the bottom of the window, near the top of the window. And so we similarly fell into there with these pauses, all within this recent trend. No big surprises there. For more context, we like to do this once in a while. We'll compare this to Pu'o'o data. For Pu'o'o, we have data from 83 to 86. There were really 44 episodes of high fountaining, not 1 through 3, which were the opening phases, really is 4 through 47 there. And so you see here the Pu'o'o is almost like there were bursts of groupings of higher fountains. Some of these missing data were just because it was too foggy for them to have a measurement. So it doesn't necessarily mean 0, it just means missing data. Just to keep that in mind here when you see these gaps. But what you can see is we also have had these somewhat groupings, and here we are in the most recent one, and it's just not clear that you can say what it would lead to from here, right? And you see Pu'o'o had those, and then they eventually waned and got a little bit less variable here towards the end, but we haven't seen anything we can compare that to. I'm just showing it here to give you something to look at as well and train your eyes on. So here's our duration, our unscaled graph, really high at the beginning, tapering off. In that sense, the pattern is similar to Pu'o'o as far as duration. So they had higher durations at the beginning, and then eventually becoming more steadily short. So that's our big picture. But I think really you got to zoom into this part to really see more of the nuance. And then you see there's our top frame again. But down here, you can see if we scale off the graph, these top ones, there is more of a variation present here since about episode 18 or so, and everything before that being longer for the durations. And here within the even more zoomed in view from episode 5 and on, you see there's a little bit of a change here between 38 and 39, between 36 and 37, but that's a similar range there that we've seen in the past, right there. So that's our duration snapshot. For the length of a pauses, you can see we've clearly have this greater set here. That wasn't ever really clear at Pu'u'u, as I can see here. You can see similar of these pulsing nature of groupings of these clusters of pauses, but nothing quite looks the same. So really, I think the comparisons are breaking down as we go on. If we look at the output volumes, Pu'u'u's had this wide range with some variations off of the main trend here, but overall you can see that they were at some level, seemingly went up and then came down again. Is how I see this going right there. So if anything here, we're seeing a bigger spread, and the average of it is still going up. And so I haven't seen it turn around and come down yet as far as that, right? It just takes some other dynamic of, does it end in some different way than Pu'u'u, where it just cracks and goes somewhere else without having this lowering of output of volumes. Still trying to just basically guess or anticipate the range of things it might do here. Discharge rates, we've noted here are populations of high ones recently, and the lower ones here. Pu'u'u does have a similar high spread here towards the middle, before it decreases as well. So we don't see that here either. So what else have I got here? One last graph. This is all the eruptions at the summit, or on Kīlauea from 2020 to 2026. In millions of cubic meters here. So here we are, over 200 for our ongoing eruption. Per episode, it's actually greater than the East Rift and Southwest Rift eruptions in 2024. And it's actually greater than all the other ones added all together here, right? So that's the actual overall volume. And I have inside each box the effusion rate in cubic meters per second. So here we can see 6.4 is our average for our a little bit more than a year now, which is more than twice the rate that we had for our next longest eruption here, which was the 2021 eruption. So this same graph, different version here, I'll just change the inner parentheses to the duration in days, which is over a year for our current eruption here. And that 2021 one went on for quite a bit longer here. So it went on for almost 450 days, but didn't reach half the amount of volume as we have here.
That's really the thing about all this. It's just been the amount of volume and the consistency of it all. I mean, remember when it was every Tuesday, it felt like it was so consistent on that weekly. It was just like, I stopped even trying to explain. I'm just like, just check on Tuesday, for a minute there. But the amount of volume coming out, right, where we were at one fountain, we were like, wow, this is crazy. And then it started double fountaining over 1,000 feet and just huge volumes. We always compare 2018 volumes to Mauna Loa. But in reality, I think when Ken was talking about this eruption at Kīlauea, he was also comparing it to Mauna Loa volumes.
Right.
So it's just a really, crazy eruption, this whole thing.
I mean, if you were to try to like just create a situation where you have the most efficient exit of lava from the volcano, right? Like you just draw like a straight pipe from the magma reservoir area straight up and have it come straight out. And we kind of have that. We have almost that here.
Right, with like a pressure relief valve of some kind where it like regulates it until pressure happens, and then it releases, and we're into our episode.
Right. Yeah, we have all complications of physics, real world physics, actually happening in there, right?
Yeah.
But otherwise, you have your what I draw as a kid, just a straight pipe straight up, right? And yeah, hard to make it more efficient. We don't have this business of it's coming up under the summit and it's turning into the rift zone and going through the rift zone for 9 miles, come out of Pu'o'o, and then it's degasses a little bit in the crater, but it actually goes in a lava tube, and it goes another 7 miles from there before it actually pours out of a hole, and like, you see it for 2 seconds, hits the ocean. There's none of that going on. It's just straight up and out.
Yep.
All right, so to finish off our monitoring signals here, I thought we could just go over our graphs as we often do here. So here is the data starting for the last week. We have some noise. We don't really see much change in the crater elevation where this laser was pointing, which is interesting because if our episode was right in here, right, on the 12th, then where this laser is pointing did not have lava flow across its area. So it just happened to be the luck or bad luck of the shot there. For example, we had a missed shot for once. And pretty amazing. It hasn't happened more often than that. For the tilt plots, the green line is the East Rift Zone at Pu'o'o. Overall, it's a net down. You see a little bit of variation here. Perhaps it's weather, precipitation, those kind of things, or potentially adjustments of the ground themselves at Pu'o'o, but localized to the area and not tied to what's happening at the summit, happening totally separately or independently. So there is that East Rift line, and then here we see the summit line in blue with its deflation and reinflation pattern since then. Earthquake counts in the last week. Here's the little pulse of summit earthquakes appearing in accounts per day. And if we look at the depth versus time plot over the last week, you can see that it's this shallow band starts coming in here, and then even more recently, this third pulse of them happening yesterday and today. You see them coming in right here. Whereas you still have ongoing deeper events at Pahala and some deeper events than that as well. But it's really the shallow band that's causing the change in accounts, as we can see here. Right? Lots of small events. The red line picks up the magnitude. So if you have like one big magnitude event, this thing will jump straight up, but lots of small events will just cause it to show these little ramps, right? So here it shows you a little bit of an earthquake swarm there, and a little mini one there, a little mini one there. And you can see here, this is this set coming in here at the end, being the summit population, which you can see on the map here again. Zoom it in for you guys. All similar intermediate depth there. A couple shallower, couple deeper. Not a whole lot in the rift zone. You can see all through here, but you still have them in the south flank, south of there. And here's that main question we keep coming back to, and I like to look at it on this map usually, is pressure is building under the summit. We can see through the earthquakes, right? Can it continue to find its way out those vents? Will it have to crack open some area of the summit where it's pressurizing? Or could it reopen one of these pathways, such as the East Rift Zone or the Southwest Rift Zone, and reoccupy that to some degree, right? And that's where the south flank movement becomes important. Not just this low-level activity we see happening now, but in fact, we saw the magnitudes 4s and 5s occurring here over the last couple months in the south flank, showing that whatever pressure was building at the summit was enough to engage the south flank and cause it to then start showing that adjustment, showing that movement. So the question is, can you move the south flank further? Will there be another big earthquake and allow magma to then find more places to disperse and shift its nature? Or is it locked enough where it's going to keep holding it in and it's going to force it to be, contained at the summit still for a little longer? At some point, it will give if enough pressure builds. So the question is there enough now? Is it just enough to quake the summit, or is it enough to actually cause something further to happen, like the south flank to move or some other injection elsewhere? And that's the question. That's the little bit more dynamic time that we're in presently here. So at the whole last month, here is the data. I can't really see much through the noise there, but Tilt for the last 2 episodes, 39 and 40 there, as we've discussed. At Sand Hill, similar patterns. I'll just keep moving across this unless there's something more significant to highlight. There was a deep event you see on the graph here, but here is the recent peak in earthquakes. You can see the band in depth versus time over the last month coming in just there. So you see, it's not like we haven't had earthquakes at the summit up to this time. It's just that the size of them and the frequency have both increased at the same time, just after episode 40 here. So that is noteworthy. Tilt for the last 3 months, similar kind of pattern here. You see that we had a little bit more of a flattening before episode 40 than before 39. And 39 had a bigger drop than 40. So you'd expect that 40 has a shorter recovery. It might have a sooner onset of 41 because of that, but we'll have to wait to see what it does. Does it come straight, or does it also turn over and flatten out? And there's all 40 of them since the eruption onset, all in a line. Keep us moving here. Lava depth, just for the last year, stepping upwards, longer gaps here, and not showing a growth where the laser's pointing with the most recent one here. Earthquake counts per week, you can see not a whole lot of change there. Right, they're the biggest change being in a moment being the big earthquake we had in November on the south flank. GPS at the summit, north and south across the caldera, measuring that changing distance, showing how it's basically an accordion, right? It's basically stretching out in between episodes, and lava releases, it contracts back together very quickly, extends out, contracts, and so there you see where we were prior to episode 40 and afterwards. We've contracted that much, and between 39 and 40 we extended that much from there to there. And give you some measurement there. That's 10 centimeters, and so maybe 12 centimeters there, something like that. So 3-4 inches, somewhere in that range. Sometimes a little more, up to 6 inches, sometimes a little less. But that's the data we have there for the summit. And long term, over the last 5 years, earthquake counts are still low compared to prior to December 2024, when its eruption began. Those are all the previous earthquake swarms and eruptions, intrusions, extension of the caldera we've had over the last 5 years. And so we really are in this new era of the quasi-equilibrium here that just keeps going, and we keep wondering what might make it stop. So that's that. And back to the USGS earthquake. Let's put the earthquakes on their own up here. The information statement from Wednesday night, 10 p.m. Hawaiian time. They note here, on Wednesday at 7:35 p.m., the swarm of earthquakes began beneath the crater over 40 minutes. They're generally broadly beneath the east side of Halemaʻumaʻu crater and the south caldera. Yeah. All less than magnitude 2, with most being magnitude 1 or smaller. This is the third swarm since the end of episode 40. The first swarm was 30 minutes at 12:40 a.m. on Tuesday, followed by a second swarm at 9:10 a.m. the next day, less than 30 minutes, and then the one we just noted here, 40 minutes long. All with similar magnitude ranges. Most of the earthquakes seem to be occurring around the shallow Halemaʻumaʻu magma chamber, some 1.5 to 4 kilometers beneath the surface. Right, so this is the key phrase here, occurring around the shallow magma chamber. Most are earthquakes that accompany crack opening due to magmatic pressure. Elevated seismic activity of these intensities have not been seen at the summit since the start of eruption in December 2024. A small swarm did precede a new fissure opening in a wall at the start of episode 30. And it's yet to be determined whether these swarms after episode 40 will have an impact on lava fountaining at the surface. So here is where they are getting down to business. Volcanic systems remain a complex balance. Right? Volcanic systems remain a complex balance of magmatic pressure and strength of the surrounding rocks. If the rocks weaken, one possible outcome is injection of magma into a fracture, and that's what they call a dike. If that magma breaches the surface, a new vent might be created, shifting the focus of the eruption. And historically, episodic fountain eruptions can cease when a magma supply is diverted in this manner. So currently, all the activity remains beneath the caldera. There is no observable evidence that magma is migrating away from this area. This is a really important statement as well. Both east and southwest rift zones remain quiet at this time. Right, so you can see that just the nature of the statement is different from anything we've seen in this eruption thus far. And that's why I'm taking a little bit extra time to note it here. So that said, we can come back to our map. We've seen the other version. Let's see here if I can get these to show.
It's always fun having to reset up the map every time.
Yeah,
it does not. It just does not like live streaming that map.
Yeah, it doesn't like the size changes, right? So the thing is, if I
it doesn't like anything.
I want to keep it on the USGS page, but I want the text to be big on one page, and I want the map to be big on the other page, and those are different settings.
Like that either.
Freaks out. So here we go. Looks like we're on track here for the last week. Colored by depth, I think is correct. Yep. So there we go. There's the earthquakes. You see lots of the blues and purples. This population under Pahala is what we're used to seeing, but there's an extra set of them here under Mauna Loa Summit, just the south of Mauna Loa Summit, actually, as well as elsewhere across the island. So lots of settling events, but also that looks like the root of Mauna Loa's magma supply right there. There you have the deeper supply, and then here you see Kīlauea south flank, and then here's its summit activity. So let's try to get my cursor to where I can zoom into these ones over here. You can see these summit ones. Southeast.
So I got a question for you. And so we're talking about that, potential ending sequence and that kind of stuff. How prevalent would earthquake signatures be in that scenario? Would we see an intrusion, the dike propagating, all the telltale signs that magma's on the move, or could it be a little sneaky?
Yeah, I mean, I think you expect it to show the typical signs. If it's going to move through rock, it's going to create those same vibrations, the same tremor. How many earthquakes you get depends on how much rock you need to crack. So if you find an area that's a little cracked already, it doesn't need to show signs of cracking because it's already cracked. That's something that's kind of still in play with 2018 features, right? But if it's showing what it's showing right here, which is rocks cracking, then clearly it's not found in open space, and it's going to crack until it does find an open space, whether that's through many little cracks or through one big one that reaches the surface.
Right.
So there they are once again. And like we can come to our other earthquake map. I can show you these are sorted by size. And so the largest over the past week here is actually over on Mauna Loa's west flank at 2.9, 6 miles down. Otherwise, we have a 2.8, 2.5. They're both deep Pahala events. We have a offshore 2.3, then more 2.3, 2.2 deep events as well. Southwest Mauna Loa, so I'm trying to get to any Kīlauea events still. Here I am, Pahala again. You got to keep going all the way down to the magnitude. Oh, here's a 2.1 on the southeast flank, south flank of Kīlauea, and you get to a 2.0. Where is my 2.0? There is a 2.0, and there's a 2.0 is actually at the summit. The largest one at the summit is that one right there. So really, there are lots of small events, and something might be hard to feel even if you're standing right up there waiting for something to happen.
And assume we'd also see things like on INSAR, like you remember when we were prior to this eruption dealing with all the inflation to the southwest of the caldera down by the Keller well, and we could see the magma under the ground basically being stockpiled in there, and it's just yeah, at this point, if it moves, I don't think it's not going to be undetected. It'll be breaking rocks, and so I've seen them things, questions like, should they close down Kenikikoi? It's like, well, right now, no.
No, but if there is a swarm of earthquakes that become shallow near Kenikikoi, then you can probably bet there will close the devastation trail area and that overlook.
Right. Start getting those telltale signs, it's going to get shut down real quick, I bet.
Right. So yeah, that's really it. That's what we're waiting for. Is just wait to see what happens next. And as we just showed you, there is a little bit more going on here than just Kīlauea. There is this little bit of going on Mauna Loa deep events starting up again too. So I think we just take a couple minutes here at the very end and finish off with Mauna Loa. We're still under normal alert level aviation color code green from the USGS monthly update here. Our signals are not showing anything really that we can pick out meaningfully from the last week. If you look at the last week of earthquakes, depth versus time, you can see that in blue and purple. Here is these events we're talking about. They're not really all happening all at the same time. They're not happening like in a shallowing manner. They're kind of a couple here and a couple there. But the thing's kind of squeaking and creaking a little bit, like from different parts at different times. If you take this from the 1 week point of view to the 1 month point of view, there they are right there, that population coming in. You can see that there's still shallow events occurring under Mauna Loa Summit happening there too. I'll show you the map here shortly. Take it to the 1 year. Now you can see that this looks like it's a little bit more of a cluster. You see more of these shallow clusters of events at Mauna Loa Summit as well. And if we take it all the way to 5 years, like with the 2022 eruption happening right after that big drop in earthquakes right there, so similar time right there, right? You see that now it looks almost like it's a activation of this conduit underneath Mauna Loa Summit, right? And so just to show, we've had others of these patterns before where it seems like just makes you believe the volcano is alive and magma is coming from depth, and doesn't matter exactly what little parcel of it comes in right here and moves some other little parcel upwards. Eventually it's going to cause pressure to summit, and that's all we really care about ourselves as the very, very top. And so it doesn't really exactly matter, other than seeing like, look, it's alive, it's showing signs of activity and being fed still. And no surprise then that you see it up at the summit showing shallow earthquakes and extension on a GPS. This is a whole last year here, right? So you see the deep earthquakes in blues and purples, but in reds also over the last year, some building events under Mauna Loa Summit. And so there's the GPS, the horizontal component. We've noted before that this looks like a little bit of contraction. It's interesting if you read a USGS update in a little bit more detail. Recent data indicate the center of information has shifted to the southern caldera region, indicating refilling of a south caldera magma chamber. So we've discussed in previous updates where Mauna Loa is modeled quite often as a dike, like a big sheet that has a lot of volume, goes like this, combined with a smaller reservoir that's more spherical over here or off to the south, right? So different parts of the system and which piece of the balloon is filling up, it just depends on the moment. But if that is the case, or if this caldera is filling over here, then our measurement's happening from here to here. Then if the filling happens here, it's going to be pushing this thing together and cause contraction. So that seems to be what they're saying actually occurred during this interval here towards the end of 2025. And you can see that that has reversed and shifted back to now extending from the center of the caldera once again too. That's noteworthy. And you can see that the upward component was a little bit wonky as well because we're in that similar zone there, but it also has returned to normal as well. So still extending, still filling with magma. The big picture story is still basically this graph right here where you look at earthquakes per month. We're toying with these little changes, but they're all very, very tiny compared to the buildup we saw in the years ahead of the eruption of Mauna Loa in 2022. So just baby stuff leading up to it. We're really curious about this sequence as well, but looks like we're still a ways out. And we're just looking for the signs of life, really, and just telling you that earthquakes show like it's still alive. So it's not dead, right? It's not really active, but it is filling with magma and doing what we expect. So that's Mauna Loa, and that's where we'll end it there today.
Right. Well, yeah, we'll be back next week with be going over today's talk that Lou is recording from the USGS Volcano Watch. So hybrid episode. This episode, though, we just happened, episode 40, so wanted to get it out while it was fresh, get it all covered, catch up with 39, and then get ready to be able to do next week and then lead into episode 41 at some point too.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks, Dane. Yeah, looks like our cameras are dark right now. Not much to see.
Probably rainy and muggy and cold.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining us and sticking with us. I know we're at the end of our usual time and not to take it any longer than we have to. Yeah, appreciate your support as always, especially if you watch this far. Like we said, we've been collecting questions to pass along to the USGS, especially for the prep fair. So anything you can drop and share or pass to your friends to share, that'd be great as well. And right, our mission is still to improve preparedness and response across the island, especially to volcanoes, but all the disasters, and so this is one of our educational campaigns to do that. So hopefully that's getting us all better prepared. We can all mobilize when we need to in the communities. Hopefully that's not for a long time, but that's why we do this. So mahalo everybody for your support from our nonprofit HVERI, the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute. I'm Philip Ong for Dane DuPont, our interpreters, and Lou backs behind the scenes here. Mahalo everybody.